Hypnosis is a brainwave state. That's all it is. Your brain waves go up and down, so you got beta where you're really alert and aware. If you're really paying attention to this show right now, then you're in that beta state. Then you go into like alpha state, and that's kind of where you're more daydreamy or spacing off. Or sometimes when we get really upset and worried and we're so focused on what we're upset about, you're in a trance when you go into that. You don't have to be laying in a bed with your eyes closed.
Welcome to Unmute with Priya, the podcast where silence ends, voices rise, and women rediscover the freedom to speak and live authentically, especially in life after 40. This show is proudly sponsored by Project Icon. I'm your host, Priya Sudarsanam. Let's dive into today's conversation. Today on Unmute with Priya, my guest is Tim Shurr. Tim is a clinical hypnotherapist and founder of Indie Hypnosis, and he helps people understand why they stay stuck in patterns they can't seem to break, even when they know exactly what they should be doing. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Priya. It's exciting to have another conversation with you about this today. It's going to be a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. Let's just dive into how you got into this work to begin with. Was there something in your own life that made you say, hey, I want to start addressing behavior and patterns?
Well, kind of. I wanted to get rid of my own anxiety, my own self-sabotage, my fear of not being good enough, my fear of abandonment, right? And people not liking me or rejecting me. And so I had a lot of anxiety around it. And I was trying to figure out how to feel more peaceful, how to feel more successful, how to just be happier inside instead of stressed out all the time and worried and full of anxiety and pressure. And so I went to school for psychology. And while I was going to school, they were teaching us a lot of theory. It wasn't really helping me change how I was feeling. I went to a counselor there at the school, and he said, Tim, you have generalized anxiety disorder. And I'm like, well, how do I get generalized confidence in order? And he didn't really know. I mean, he said, well, you just got to do the work, right? Whatever that meant. And then something really interesting happened. A couple of years in, I was taking a counseling processes class, and they had guest speakers that were coming in talking about what they did. And one of them was a hypnotherapist. And he asked for a volunteer, and I thought I was the class clown. I'll go up there and cluck like a chicken and be silly. And so I volunteered, and I went up there, and within about 5 minutes, I felt this sense of peace inside that I had never felt before. That knot in my stomach just disappeared for a little while. And I'm like, what is this? And then the guy told me that I was going to feel really confident all week. And I felt really confident all week, just peaceful. I didn't have to chase approval. I didn't have to, be the class clown. I could just be at ease, comfortable in my own skin. And then it started wearing off. I went back to anxiety because I was good at doing anxiety. I thought it was happening to me. I didn't realize how much I was causing it to happen because of my thoughts and my beliefs about me and the world. So, but that put me on a new path where I started getting into more alternative therapies and got my certifications in hypnotherapy and neurolinguistic programming and then just kept going with this idea that there's tools out there that can set people free. And I'm going to find out which ones are baloney and which ones work really well. And then I'm going to help as many people as I can to eliminate needless emotional suffering, just like I did for myself.
Oh my gosh, that just sounds so liberating hearing it. Needless emotional suffering. And I think this is a really good conversation because even as I think about my own process, I caused the suffering. It just, it was nothing external. It was all in my head and the thoughts that I was going to at night and waking up with, and I was validating myself. So I'm assuming when you talk about, the thoughts and the patterns and helping people, you're helping them break out of that cycle.
Yes. Now, here's something else that I learned. And I know I said that I was causing it myself because I want to take ownership, and you do too, because we have to own what we're doing in order to have the power to change it. If it's always just happening to us, then we're stuck in a victimhood and we can't do anything about it. Right. So even if we were a victim, we still have to take the situation and realize that that was an experience and we are the experiencer. So we're more powerful than our experiences. We have thoughts, but we're not our thoughts. We're the thinker of our thoughts, which means we have power over our thoughts, even though it doesn't feel that way. And so even though we were going through this and we were validating and we were causing more suffering than we needed to, it wasn't because we were doing it on purpose. It was because we had these beliefs in our mind that made us feel, at least I did, that I wasn't good enough and I wasn't safe. Like I wasn't strong enough, brave enough, smart enough to be able to protect myself from bullying or to feel secure because I wasn't really worthy. I love myself, but I didn't like myself. And it came from these beliefs that were formed in my mind when I was a little kid. And those beliefs were like software that's running the computer. The computer doesn't care what software it runs. It's just going to run the programs. Well, we all have these computer programs that are running in our brain. And some of those programs are helpful and useful, and some of them are not. And it's not the computer's fault that it's running the software, right? But we have to, so it's not our fault that the software is in there, but we have the ability to do something about it. And most people don't think of it in this way. That's why I'm so excited that you have this show so I can share what I learned. It took 37 years, but I finally figured it out that we have these beliefs in our mind that are causing so much of this suffering. And those beliefs are at an unconscious level, and we didn't create them. And but we need to be the ones that go and update them. And we're going to talk about how to do that today.
Amazing. You know, that's the reason why I even have Unmute with Priya. And as you talk about what happened as a child, I remember 6 years old and we were going to move to the US and we were in England. I was so excited about it. Ran outside and was telling my brother because my uncle got a phone call that my dad had gotten the job. Why we would move from Cambridge to New Jersey, I don't know. That's a whole other issue, but we were super excited, and I ran out and told my brother, Raja, we're going to America. And my uncle, for whatever reason, his issue was like, shut up. And I got in trouble for it. And I held on to that story my whole life that I was not allowed to speak. Meanwhile, did he tell me not to speak anymore? No, it's just like I was so young that I created that story and so that is why even Unmute with Priya exists. So you're in the perfect place that we get to talk about, like we can break out of these things. Now, first, let's debunk some myths. When you talk about hypnosis, people think they're going under.
Yeah, it's not anesthesia.
Can you share a little bit to put people's minds at ease about what hypnosis is?
Hypnosis is a brainwave state. That's all it is. Your brain waves go up and down, so you got beta where you're really alert and aware. If you're really paying attention to this show right now, then you're in that beta state. Then you go into like alpha state, and that's kind of where you're more daydreamy or spacing off. Or sometimes when we get really upset and worried and we're so focused on what we're upset about, you're in a trance when you go into that. You don't have to be laying in a bed with your eyes closed. People go into trances all the time. I swear people are driving down the road in road rage, trances, with how people drive. And so, or just being on your smartphone, so locked into that world is like a hypnotic trance. Your smartphone is the most powerful hypnotist on the planet right now. It used to be the TV, but now it's your smartphone, so be careful. So, because all these videos and all this propaganda are hypnotic suggestions that are just hitting you with repetition over and over. So hypnosis is a way of getting into a more relaxed, open state of mind, because when you're relaxed and those brainwaves slow down a little bit, then we as humans respond more to suggestions. That's why when you're watching TV and they show you the same commercial over and over and over, and then all of a sudden you're at the grocery store and you think, I need to try that, right? Or you're at the doctor and you're like, I need to try that, right? Because it's in your mind because you've heard it a lot. So most hypnosis was designed to get you relaxed and then just give you positive affirmations with repetition so that it sticks. And that can be very helpful short term. But it's like if you don't get rid of the beliefs or upgrade some of those limiting beliefs that are inside of your mind, it's like throwing dirt on top of weeds. Putting affirmations in your mind, telling I'm wonderful and I believe in myself and I'm wealthy and I'm successful. And then you're broke and you're unhappy and you don't feel successful, then you'll feel like you're just lying to yourself. So we've got to find those beliefs and upgrade them. So that's all hypnosis really is. And then hypnotherapy is when you do like the therapy part, like the healing part. So you overcome your fears, you break your bad habits. And it's one of the fastest ways to do it because one, it feels the most comfortable. It's very relaxing. It makes you feel very peaceful while you're doing the work. And then the second part of it, it goes right to the core beliefs or right to the situations that are causing the most problems. So you're pulling that weed out at the root, where a lot of talk therapy is like cutting the top off of a weed, just talking about problems, rationalizing problems, trying to use your logic and your intellect. But this is mostly an emotional issue, not an intellect issue. And so we get stuck. That's why people go to therapy for 10 years sometimes, talk about their problems, but not really feel any better.
So how do we break from these patterns and have it be lasting? And one of the things that I hear people say, and I've done it too, is you take ownership of the things that you think you have. So, and I've trying to change that even with my parents. So rather than My dad has a Parkinsonism right now. So rather than saying I have Parkinson's, I've been diagnosed with. So because I feel like when people say I have, they hang on to it with dear life. Like they
Yeah,
own it.
it's like they're saying I am.
I am. Yeah.
Am Parkinson's. No, you're
Yeah.
not. It's like you're not a broken arm. It's just something that you're experiencing.
Yeah. So how do you even start to break this? Especially, let's say you're in your 70s and this has been happening since you're 6.
Yes, I've had clients in their 80s and early 90s come to me
Wow.
wanting to break these issues that they had with their father, when they were 6 years old. And so it's never too late to want to grow, right? You grow until you die. So if you stop growing, that's when you die, I think. So even if you're still alive, we feel dead inside.
Yeah.
So there's a few ways to do this, right? You can ask yourself 2 questions. What would I have to believe to feel this way? So if we're talking about our parents, right, we're really upset or we have resentment or we're scared, what do I have to believe? I have to believe that something bad's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And what would I rather believe instead? I want to believe that I'll be okay no matter what happens, right? So I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be safe. I'm going to get through this no matter what, right? That gives us courage. It gives us more peace of mind because we're going to go through pain in life, but suffering, so much of the suffering is optional because of the story we tell ourselves. And, we throw gas on the fire and we're using our mind to scare us instead of prepare us. So, when I go through my experiences with people, there's usually 4 core areas that we need to work through. So session 1, we're upgrading the beliefs, right? We're going right to the core issue. What is the biggest, deepest fear you have? That is, imagine having a barrel of water and you're trying to put all this water into the barrel, but it keeps leaking out. Everybody's focusing on your mindset. Just pour more more water into the barrel. What I'm looking for is there a hole in the bottom of the barrel? Mm-hmm. And if we patch that hole, then everything else will be held. All the water, everything else you've done will work. But if you don't patch the hole in the bottom of the barrel, it doesn't matter what you do with your mindset. You're never going to feel full or fulfilled, right? And so, or faithful. So what we need to do is find those holes and patch them. And our holes are those limiting beliefs that made you feel like you weren't allowed to use your voice. You weren't allowed to be yourself. You weren't allowed to be excited, right? You were supposed to be seen and not heard. And then imagine how that affects you growing up through life,
Right.
how we hold back or we rebel and go the other way and end up having our own shows. So, and as long as we do that with a sense of peace, so we take our pain, we turn it into purpose, that's going to make you feel fulfilled. Some people are still being driven by that anxiety, by that chip on their shoulder, by the resentment. So no matter how much they prove and no matter how much they accomplish, it never feels like it's good enough. And so they're being driven by that pain instead of by the peace. So we upgrade the belief. In session 2, we upgrade the feelings. We use forgiveness and we release the anger, the hurt, the resentment, the self-pity, the victimhood. We have to release that. It's like poison. Wayne Dyer once said that you get bit by a poisonous snake, the snake bite hurts, but that's not what kills you. It's the venom inside that paralyzes you, and you got to get the venom out. But when we have pain, a lot of times we protect the venom because we think that we have to hold it in so that we don't get hurt again. But that's just keeping the poison inside. So we've got to get that poison out. And I think a lot of people try, but they don't know how because most therapists and most people in pop psychology don't understand that this one missing piece is you got to upgrade those core beliefs. You can go and do inner child work. You can reframe the experience. You can look at it in a different way. But if you don't do that one extra piece of what was the belief that I ended up walking away with because of that experience, and then what would I rather believe instead from now on, coming from an adult perspective, coming with the ability to choose what I want to believe right now and doing it consciously. Where when you were a kid, you didn't have that wisdom, you didn't have those resources, you didn't know your brain was making up that belief, and you didn't know the belief was there, right? So we have to go back as an adult and have a garage sale in our brain, donate the crap that doesn't need to be there anymore. And so, and then the third...
Taking shots for the things you're saying. As you're saying that, I'm like, I've taken 10 shots already.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the third step is you have to then be given new tools and new strategies so people know how to take charge of themselves in the moment. Most people, when they're feeling stressed, anxious, depressed, they're staring at the ground, they're breathing through their mouth, they're telling themselves what they don't want and how bad things are going to be. So they're focusing on what they don't want, which causes you to go there because your brain works like a GPS. You tell it where you want it to go and it starts to take you there. If I don't want to go to the post office, I don't tell the GPS, don't take me to the post office. But we do that all day long with our worries. I hope this doesn't happen. Or we tell ourselves, just don't eat the cookies, just don't eat the cookies. And then you do, because people don't understand how their mind works in that way. So they focus on what they don't want, and then they imagine worst case scenarios. So I train my clients to do the exact opposite. We look up, we breathe through our nose. We start to focus on what we do want. We ask different questions. What do I want? How do I want things to go? What resources do I have? Who can I lean on for support? What's great about this situation? How can I make this more fun? Right? How can I show up in a way that will leave me feeling proud of myself afterwards? You ask questions like that, your brain gives you a new type of idea, insight, awareness, and then you start focusing on what you want. You're training your internal GPS to move in that new direction, and then you start getting more desirable results, which reinforces the new belief.
And so essentially, I mean, that's such a in-depth process of really shifting somebody out of their thoughts. But when we think about the thoughts that we have and go in this spiral, or if you don't mind cursing, I call it a shitstorm of thoughts. So from what I've understood, as far as myelin, you stay in the same pattern. And when you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you create this myelin sheath. So then it becomes this familiar pattern in your body. And so that's why you do it on autopilot. So as you start doing this process with you and start creating new patterns, are you essentially creating new neural connections and breaking those old ones that we've been stuck in that are solidified?
Yes. Yeah. The study of neuroplasticity, where your brain and the cells in your body are able to learn and grow and create and shift. We're not rigid, we're fluid. And so when I have clients that had IBS or had fibromyalgia or had all kinds of physical symptoms because of the trauma that they went through, and then they held all that inflammation for years, as they say, the body keeps the score. And so and most people are doing every physical thing that they can possibly do, but they haven't done the inner mental work or the emotional work because they don't want to relive it. And they think that's what therapy is, where you have to talk about and relive every terrible thing you've ever been through. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can bypass a lot of that and go to the beliefs and upgrade the beliefs, but people don't know this. That's why I'm so happy you have this show, and that's why I'm here sharing it and yelling it everywhere I can, to let people know that it's the 21st century and we need 21st century tools, and they're available. It's just most people don't know it. Even hypnotherapy is so effective if you do it right with the hypnotherapy part of it. And but most people think of hypnosis as clucking like a chicken, or putting you in a trance and making you rob banks because of movies, right? And the scary things they show you on TV, but that's all make believe. So that's why we need to realize that your body is very flexible, very fluid. It doesn't matter how long you've been this way. People are always afraid. They're always afraid it's not going to work for me.
That's what I hear a lot of. People are already doing a Kobayashi Maru and it's not going to work. I've tried everything, so therefore this is not going to work either. Yeah.
Most people, when they say that, they've tried the same 5 things disguised differently, and they just do it over and over. They go to doctors, they get tests, they get medicines, they try journaling, they go for walks, they try some yoga, they watch some self-help videos, and that's really about all they do. And then they go right back to how they were programmed again. So you've been doing a lot of things. You just haven't been doing the things that are going to get you the results, obviously, or you'd have them. That's not your fault. A lot of it is not anybody's fault. They just didn't have the right tools, And so I think that most people are actively trying to get better, but they just, a lot of the tools that are out there don't work very well. And it frustrates me. And I had a mentor one time. He said, do something about it. If you don't like something, be part of the solution. Otherwise, you're just part of the problem. So here I am. I got 3 interviews today. This is my second one today. Just trying to get the word out there as much as I can to be a part of the solution, just like you.
Yeah. Well, a question with the clients that you've worked with. I have to keep notes in my head, otherwise I lose it.
Yeah.
Midlife part of it. But
I get it.
Somebody comes out of this process with you. They're transformed. They have broken through these beliefs, and they've got these new beliefs that are more serving for them where they are in their life. Do you see that they've become this new version of themselves, or is it this version of themselves that's always been there, but it's just been clouded with all this crap?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. I think that a lot of times, well, let's this case for you, right? So that little girl that you were with all that excitement and going to Jersey before you knew what Jersey was, and no offense to the New Jerseyans, but right, but just you know, that idea that you had all that inside of you already, and then you had this experience, and then your brain decided that that means that you're not allowed to express yourself, right? For whatever reason. So, but all that was still inside of you. It was just being suppressed. So it's not, we weren't adding anything more wonderful. You were already wonderful and amazing and had everything you need. You know, you're already more than enough. So that's why I say we're like a high performance race car, you know, but we've got a parking brake set and we don't know the parking brake is set, or we know it, but we can't find it so that we can release it. Right. But when you release it, the car is fast. It goes.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes people need more tools. We need more understanding of how to activate our relaxation response, how to, you know, communicate in a way that is going to make us feel more safe or loved or supported. So we need some training, right? But your ability and your capacity is already within you. So I guess my answer would be that I'm not making you a new person. I'm allowing you to be who you always were intended to be. We're just removing the malware that was accidentally downloaded into you as a kid.
Yeah. That's an amazing, I mean, after I spoke to you the first time, and I was working with my other clients, I actually started using computers as analogies because it made sense it's so easy to reference. And why would it be different from the way that our brains are doing things? And so I love that you're talking about removing the malware and returning to who we always have been. And we get to be that version of ourselves. Why is fear there? Why do we immediately go to fear? What does fear do to us?
Well, fear is hardwired into our brain as a protective measure. It wasn't there to try to scare us. It was there to warn us of danger or perceived threat. Because when we were roaming around this planet earlier, we had a lot of dangers. You go into a dark cave and where it's dark, you could get attacked, right? You go by a hole, you could get attacked. You walk through the woods, you get eaten by a bear or a tiger or something. And, you know, you go into the water and you step on something and then you get sick and then have the kind of medicine we have. And so you die. So there was a lot of death and a lot of illness, and everything felt like life or death. So now you fast forward through all these centuries of that training in our DNA, and now we get a bill and we feel like it's life or death. We get stuck in traffic and we feel like it's life or death, right? So our body is still reacting as though we are in mortal danger. And that's why a lot of times we go through life making everything an emergency instead of just bringing some urgency to it. And then it becomes just a habit. And if you don't know any better, or if you grew up watching a parent act the same way, then that's not only wired in your DNA, but it's also a learned trait. And it's something that you've been practicing for a long time. So you're really good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think that anybody's trying to scare themselves. I think that we're afraid because we have a lot of experiences. We have a lot to be afraid of. You know, life is very difficult and full of pain and loss and unfairness, right? And it can break your heart. So, but if you have a belief that life is also a miracle, that this place that we're in, we don't have to create a miracle or find a miracle. We are a miracle. Living here, having this conversation where we don't even live close to each other, you know, being able to share this with others who are watching and listening right now, being aware that we're on a rock floating in the middle of space, in the middle of nowhere, right? And we're conscious enough to be able to have this conversation is extraordinary. And so that's where gratitude comes in, you know, recognizing how much we've already won and we don't even know it. So, yeah.
One of the things that I've, in my studies in the past 5 years is that what's happening on the outside, or just Neville Goddard's teachings, that everything is a reflection of what's going on inside. So if it's very chaotic inside, that we're going to see that reflected on the outside. But in contrast with the clients that you've worked with, and once they go through this process, they've changed, they've upgraded, they've taken out the malware, do they start to notice that the outside circumstances are changing as well?
Oh, yes. Yes. And even if some of those situations don't change, it's changed anyway because they're not reacting to it the way that they were before. So it doesn't matter. Yeah. So if every time it rains outside, I have to hide under the couch, because I'm afraid of storms, and I don't have that fear anymore. When it rains outside, it's just like, oh, it's raining. So it doesn't matter if it's still raining or not because you're peaceful inside, right? Or if someone's afraid of flying because they have a panic attack and on a plane and now they can't get on a plane anymore. And all of a sudden they don't have that panic attack anymore. When they think of flying, they're okay now. The plane didn't change. We changed. And now we can get back on a plane and we have more freedom again to be able to get where we want faster. Yeah. So people are always trying to change what's going on outside of them. But as Neville said, and as you referred, Priya, that what we need to really change is what's going on the inside. People would always say, how do you get someone to stop pushing my buttons? And I said, get rid of the buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah, then they can't push it because you're not going to be able to stop people from trying. However, I have seen situations themselves turn around as well. When I start taking people through this one belief away journey, I tell them, and part of it is maybe the hypnotist in me because I'm giving them these suggestions, but it comes true. Like every time, it's consistent, it's wild, right? But I will tell them that something amazing is going to happen for you. Something unexpectedly is going to show up in your life. And I was saying that because that's what I kept observing over and over with clients who went through this journey, is that something magical would show up. They would get a new job. They would meet someone and get married. They suddenly got pregnant after years and trying with all the fertility treatments and stuff. And then all of a sudden they went through this journey and then one woman had twins. So many experiences and just little things. A marriage started to improve. Connection with your kid that was rough, started to come back again. And I think that's because you're putting out a different kind of energy. And so physics tells you that a different kind of energy, the same kind of energy is going to come back to you. So if you're putting out something peaceful, then something peaceful is going to come back to you. I also believe the law of attraction is like you're going to attract what you want into your life. I feel like what you want is already here. You're just not seeing it.
Yeah.
Right? It's already here. So it's like radio waves are all around us right now. And the tuner, you just got to go to the right frequency and then you can hear whatever kind of music you want. The waves you don't have to go find them. They're here.
Yeah.
Right? We just got to tune in to the right frequency. And this is a way of tuning in to a life of more peace and joy.
Yeah. And I think we can get more people tuning into what they want. I think we understand that because we often are tuning into the things that we don't want. They show up, we validate them, saying, see, I knew it. This was going to happen again.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So if we can start empowering more people and just people listening to this podcast, that you can have the life that you want. Now, I'm like you. I see that, we've got this big, huge quantum space. It's dark. I can't see anything in there, but everything that we desire exists in that space, so we can draw it to ourselves. And I find also just with people that I've worked with, it draws a little bit closer and it gets scary and it's pushed away. So have you noticed that as well?
Yes, there's a belief behind that, right? Because remember, what would I have to believe to think that way? I'd have to believe that it could somehow get worse. Because if you knew it was going to be better, why would you be afraid?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I wouldn't be afraid, right? But if you think it's somehow going to get worse, you might be afraid. You might push it away. So we might think, well, I'll lose love, or I'll have even more suffering, or if I try to grow my business and I spend this money, then I'll be in more debt and it won't work, right? And so the fear is that it won't work or I'm not smart enough to make it work. And both of those are false, right? So those are just limiting beliefs. But our beliefs in our head, when we're having them, doesn't feel like a belief. It feels like reality.
Absolutely.
This is reality. And I'm like, no, this is your subjective interpretation of reality. And so now I understand that if a tree falls down in front of us, the reality is that just fell. Okay. But what we do as human beings next is we give it another meaning after that. Okay. So what does that mean about the tree? It means that it's the circle of life. It's going to go and provide food for all the other trees in the forest. Or, oh, this was a horrible thing that tree was so old and then it fell and died. And you know what that means? That no matter how strong you are, you could die at any minute, and so we have all kinds of beliefs. And some people are like, I don't care if the tree fell or not, right? So we have all kinds of spins on what happened. So maybe there is a reality of a situation, but we're in our head giving it our own little spin. And that little spin that we give it is what's causing us to feel the way that we're feeling. But what I'm here to say is that you're giving it that spin because at an unconscious level, your brain has a rule that makes you think that way. And if you upgrade that rule, you can upgrade the spin more easily. It doesn't have to be a struggle. You don't have to fight yourself. You don't have to constantly try to pretend that you believe something that you don't. You'll just believe something that's more useful because you have a belief system that supports it.
As you're talking, I'm just thinking exhausting versus liberating. Which one I want to
Truly,
choose. Yeah. Yeah.
truly. A lot of people, that's what they say. I'm like, how do you feel afterwards? And they're like, I feel lighter. They always say I feel lighter. I'm like, that's how you know it's the truth.
Yeah.
The truth makes you lighter, and the other stuff makes you feel heavy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I could keep talking to you for hours and hours. So this podcast, like I said, Unmute with Priya, and really who the people it's shifting, who I've been speaking to are women who are navigating through perimenopause and all the transitions that are happening at midlife. But so what would you say to that? Like, why is that happening? Women, we go through this period, right? And I think like hormonally, our bodies are prepping for childbirth for years, and then all of a sudden this change happens, and then we're like, I can't do this anymore. Oh my gosh. And you wake up. In your expertise, what's happening?
Well,
That's a
I
lot
don't
of
think
questions.
any man should really chime in too much on this
It's all
process. So I'm
right.
going to tread lightly because my wife is going through this right now as well. So I'm going to, with all respect, I think that, women are incredible because you can create birth, you can create other humans. It's like amazing. But there's a change that's going to go through for, I guess, through the anatomy, there's going to be I hate to say a price to pay because that sounds like a negative thing, right? But there's going to be changes that happen inside. So it's a beautiful gift, but there's ebb and flow, right? So what I have found are a couple of things. One, hypnosis is great for cooling down hot flashes or power surges, right? So I remember the US Army actually reached out to me one time to see if I could make some programs for the female soldiers to help with some of this, because they said that in their research, they found that hypnosis seemed to be one of the few things that actually helped without trying to do hormone replacement therapy or just tough it out. Because sometimes menopause can be like 10 years. That's a long time to toughen it out. So the hypnosis can help with that, just for the deep relaxation. It's also a time in life where women are redefining who they want to be for the next chapter, because many women feel like they've sacrificed their identity and who they are, and are constantly the giving tree or the sacrificial lamb, always sacrificing themselves for everybody else. And they're still doing it because it's such a habit, even if they know it and they don't want to anymore. And so going and upgrading some of those beliefs. Plus, we all have our, traumas, our big T and little t traumas. And usually you are so distracted with a family, just going through everything that you have, run a career, that when we finally hit a certain age, that's when we start reflecting more. And so sometimes we turn 50 and all of our trauma comes up, right? Because this is the time of life where that's why they call it the midlife crisis, because we're reviewing now what we feel is acceptable and what isn't, what we'll tolerate and what we won't. And so it's a really powerful time for so many reasons, physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, for them to talk with you about how to do this and how to learn how to upgrade their beliefs, right? So that they can find that sense of peace as they move into the next chapter.
Yeah. And I feel like this is where you come in, your expertise, because I think so many people are already talking themselves with the propaganda that you talked about, the hypnosis that's happening daily on TV and commercials. We're already talking ourselves that things are getting worse. Meanwhile, we can upgrade our beliefs that like things are getting really good. This is like we're stepping into the best times of our lives. So definitely a place for your work in this area.
See, that was a powerful belief that you just shared, Priya,
What did I
right?
say?
That we are stepping
Yeah.
into the best times of our life, because a lot of people will say, I've lost the best times of my life. I missed out. I didn't get what I was supposed to do. I've lost, and now it's over, and now I can't ever get it back. And that creates huge amounts of suffering. So, but if you have a belief shift that says, I'm going to make the rest of my life the best of my life, you're no longer staring at your past all the time. You're now focusing on where you are and where you're headed. And that's what the most fulfilled, happy people do.
Yeah. As you talk, I just feel liberation. That's the word that just keeps coming up. $1 million question. How can people work with you? Do you work with, in what capacity do you work with people?
Yeah, so I still provide, my programs online. I have my book. You can go to onebeliefawaybook.com. We'll put the links in the show notes. I do private coaching. So as long as there's space in the calendar. And so if you need some help, reach out and just go to Indie Hypnosis, INDY. It's short for Indianapolis. That's where I built my practice for like 20 something years. Then I moved to Los Angeles doing the celebrity hypnotist thing and talking to you from Florida right now. So I have clients all over the world. And But we do our sessions right over the phone or right through Zoom. And so if you need help, I'll help you. Some of my certified hypnotherapist coaches will help you because we'll get you past those biggest stumbling blocks. We're not doing life coaching. We're not doing long-term therapy. We're just getting you past those big blocks. A lot of therapists send their clients to me, I get them unstuck and I send them right back.
Yeah.
And it works great.
Amazing. So we'll make sure to put those links in the show notes. This is such a great conversation. Like I said, I think I could keep going on and on and on with you. But for anybody who's listening and is really resonating with what you're saying, what's one place that they can start with as far as shifting a thought or if they're in this spiral?
Yes. Well, you just got to remember and just start telling yourself from now on that you're more than enough. You got this no matter what you've been through. You're the experiencer. So it doesn't matter what shows up. What matters is how you show up. Doesn't matter what's going to happen to you. Focus on what you can bring to the situation because you're just one belief away from your next big breakthrough. So now you have had this awakening. You've heard this message. It was for you. And so now you got the prosperity seeds, plant them, put them in the ground. They're not going to grow in your pocket, right? So reach out to Priya or subscribe to this show, share it with a friend, go get the book, the One Belief Away book, reach out to indiehypnosis.com for a free consultation. Take the next step because every time you take a step towards what you want is taking a big step towards you.
What a way to end. Tim, it's been so amazing to have you on the show. This episode's going to help so many people.
Yay. Well, thank you for making it possible. We really appreciate it.
And this show was brought to you by Project Icon.